Well, hello everyone. This is Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be exploring creating the bokeh effect using a stencil and white ink. Let's talk about the products we'll be using today. I'll be using the Layered Confetti Stencil Set from Simon Says Stamp. This is a 3-part stencil set that can be used individually, but I think it works best when you layer all 3 stencils together. I'll also be using a couple of inks from Pink Fresh Studio, which are Sunshine, Aquamarine, and Clementine. And then of course we need a white ink, so I'm going to be using the Unicorn White ink from Hero Arts. This is a pigment ink that is really going to stand out and help us create our effect. I'll be using a couple of blending brushes from Tailored Expressions, and then I have these white blending brushes that are dedicated to white ink that are from Nuvo. I also have some Nina Classic Crest Solar White in 80-pound weight. And then I also have a couple of pieces of Hero Arts Pitch Black cardstock. And last but not least, I'll be using my inkstand from the Inkstand shop. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating 2 different backgrounds or 2 different cards today. For this first background, we're going to be creating a colored background to layer our bokeh effect on. If you don't know what bokeh is, it is a photography effect where your images in the background are blurred and they kind of have little dots and specks layered over them. So that's what we're going for, is a blurry background with little white dots of different sizes kind of floating over them. So this very first card we're going to be making is the colored background. So we're going to go in with some Clementine ink first and lay that down in a couple of different places. So we're not like creating a background where we have like bands of color across the piece of our panel. We're going to be applying this color in spots. So I'm following up that Clementine with adding some Sunshine ink now. And notice that I'm going direct to paper this time with some of this Sunshine ink. And I'm starting in the Clementine section. Of course, you can use whatever colors you choose if you choose to make a card with this effect. But this is how I decided to go about creating my card. Now I'm coming in with the aquamarine and I'm filling in all the white spaces first. What you really want, like with any ink blending effect, is you really want all the colors to touch and overlap. And that is especially important when we're going for creating this bokeh effect. So I'm going to come in and bring in this aquamarine and fill in all the white spaces, and also making sure that I'm overlapping with the other ink colors that I've laid down already. And as I always do with my ink blending, I go back through my colors in the reverse order. So the color I used before aquamarine was the Sunshine. So I'm going to come back in with the Sunshine and just touch up those areas. I just want to make sure that they are pronounced and that I have a good blend between the colors that are beside it. And then I'm going to finish up with the Clementine. Now, as always with ink blending panels, it may look like a little bit of a mess right now, but remember, we're using dye inks, and those dye inks are going to dry back into the paper, and they're going to settle down and create a great blend for us. So even if you feel like your colors aren't coming together or your design isn't coming together, I encourage you to keep going. I promise you, once we layer the stenciling on top, everything will come together. So I'm just going to touch up the aquamarine sections one last time and just kind of pull everything together with this last application of ink. And with that, the panel is complete. Well, this part of creating the panel is complete. Now it's time to move on to layering of the layering of the stencils. So now I'm going to bring in some Easy C tape, because what I'm going to do is place some Easy C tape on the back of my panel, and then I'm going to just interchange my stencils quickly and easily. By having the tape on the back of the panel, I can just peel the stencil up and lay a new one down. Most of the products that I have today, I will have linked on my blog post, so be sure to check that out, where you can find specifically the products that I'm using today. So as I mentioned earlier, this stencil set comes in three sections, three pieces rather. And so I like to start out with the largest circles first. So I'm going to take my unicorn ink and I'm going to smush some of that onto my glass mat. This is a glass craft mat from Glassboard Studio, and I have a coupon code that'll be linked in the description below. This is definitely one of those times when having a glass craft mat will help you achieve the technique and the look you're going for. So as you can see, I'm picking up some of that white unicorn ink off of my glass mat, and I'm blending that onto my card base, my card panel rather. The application of the ink is not even across all of the circles. I want some of the circles to be a little bit thicker and more dense than the others, because that's what the bokeh effect looks like when you see pictures where that effect has been used. So I'm finished with the first stencil. Now I'm going to move on to the second stencil, which is kind of the mid-size circles. So I'm going back into my unicorn white ink, and I'm going to apply that through the stencil onto the panel. The unicorn white ink, again, is a pigment ink, so it will be able to be seen on top of all these colors, and you will really be able to see it when on the next panel that we create. So again, I'm using a light hand in some areas and a heavier hand in other areas. And you can start to see the card really come together. Now I'm going to use the third and final stencil, which is the smallest size dots of the entire stencil set. And again, I'm going in, grab some of that unicorn white ink and apply it through this stencil. Now, I'm not even waiting in between for the unicorn ink to dry on the previous applications. I'm just going in one right after another and applying the ink on top. I don't think that it's necessary to wait for it to dry, even though we know that pigment inks take longer to dry than dye inks. But I kind of also think that works with this effect. So now I've pulled back the third stencil and look at the final panel that we've created. You can see where all those dots are layered on top of each other, and you can really see the bokeh effect come to life. I absolutely love the way this came together. So I'm going to set that aside and let that panel dry. So now I thought it would be nice to try this bokeh effect on a piece of black cardstock. This is a piece of Hero Art's pitch black cardstock, which in and of itself can be a unicorn to find at times. It's so highly sought after because it is a very, very true black cardstock. But if you don't have Hero Art's pitch black cardstock, use whatever black cardstock you may have. So instead of creating a colorful panel like we did with the first panel, we're just going in on this black cardstock and going direct to inking it up. So on this panel, because this is is black cardstock, you can really see the areas where I went heavy with the inking and lighter in other places. So I'm going to pull this first stencil back, and you can tell there the heavy areas and the lighter areas. So I went in and applied the second stencil. Reveal what that looks like. And now we're going to come in with the third stencil, the smallest of the dots. Had one little area there, I wanted to add some more. And now you can see what this bokeh effect using these layered confetti stencils, what it can create on this black cardstock. I think I'm also going to try creating this card with some oxide inks, but I'll be using colored ink. So check out my Instagram reels. I'll probably be making that on a reel come soon. Okay, so now it's time to move on to working and creating our card. So I cut down the panels, cut off 1/4 of an inch from each side, and I've decided to use this beautiful die set from Simon Says Stamp. I wanted to use this stamp set because I wanted to make sure that my sentiment had a shadow and a sentiment layer so that the sentiment could stand out from all that's going on the panel in the background. So I've cut a couple of pieces of the shadow from some white cardstock, and then for the black card I used a rainbow metallic paper, and then for the colorful background I used a coordinating teal colored paper for the sentiment part. So I just used my Barely Arts glue. You guys know I love that glue, to adhere all the layers of cardstock together to create the dimensional sentiment. I almost forgot about the little dot that goes above the eye, but luckily I still had it right there on my glass mat. So I'm going to come in and add that in just a second. I love using liquid glue when I'm layering up my sentiments because it gives me a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room to be able to make sure that the alignment that I want is achieved. So there is the little dot that goes above the eye. It's actually called a tittle. I learned that a couple years ago. But I couldn't get it with my picker, my poker, so I had to use my picker. We have so many crafting tools, and each one of them has a special place and need. So there's that sentiment to coordinate with the colorful background, and then the iridescent or metallic background will coordinate with the black panel. So on the back of each panel, I've put a couple of strips of foam tape because I really wanted the panel to sit up off of my top folding card base. This top folding card bases are made from accent opaque 120-pound weight paper. And again, most of the products, including this paper, will be linked on my blog so that you can know what products I was using today. So I've applied both panels to our card bases. And you can see you have a nice little white border around each one of them. And now I'm going to use my Barely Arts glue again to secure our large sentiments to our card panels. So off camera, I also created some little sub sentiments with UR as the wording. And this will be a great encouragement card to give to someone when they're not necessarily feeling their best. So I'm going to use my tweezers and add those sub-sentiments to the card. And that is going to complete both cards. I want to thank you for joining me today for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And you can also join me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter. And be sure to stop by at my blog and website at thedeltacrafter.com. Have a crafty day, everyone. Enjoy!